Hey everyone, it's Jeff. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. I'm in the process of moving right now, so no face cam, nothing, sorry about that. So enjoy looking at whatever the hell's on the screen right now. Anyways, the Sacramento Kings, who, just a fun fact, they finished with the worst defensive rating in history last season. So congratulations, Luke Walton, because that's incredible. On that positive note, I actually want to talk about why I think the Sacramento Kings are a bit of a sleeper for next season. Now, I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs, or I'm not claiming to be better than the Timberwolves or the Pelicans or whatever other teams are in the mix. But I legitimately believe they have the upside of a playoff team, despite the fact that I think a lot of people have basically written them off. I'm going to start with Tyrese Haliburton because, without question, this is the most important swing factor in this discussion. Last season, as a rookie, averaged 13 points a game, 5 assists. He shot 47% from the field, 41% from 3 on over 5 threes a game. Made a video about him talking about breakout players next season, but long story short, I think that we've seen a lot of young point guards take sophomore leaps, right? Luka Doncic, Trae Young, Darren Fox, Colin Sexton even, and to be honest, I think Ja Morant is pretty much the only young point guard in the last 2-3 years that hasn't taken that huge leap after his rookie season. And even so, Ja Morant was amazing in the playoffs this year. And I think you can attribute some of his regular season stagnation to basically having an injury for most of the season. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Tyrese Haliburton, like those guys, right, has a huge breakout sophomore year. And I'm not claiming he's going to put up Luka Doncic or Trae Young numbers in a sophomore season, right, because they're just amazing. But you look at the leap that Darren Fox took from his rookie season to his sophomore season, he went from 12 points a game to 17. And like I said in my previous video, I think just by the virtue of gaining more experience and playing in the NBA more, Haliburton will get more comfortable playing in the NBA, right? And he'll read defenses better, he'll understand the pace and flow of the game better. I don't think he needs to take this huge jump in pure skill to actually have this breakout season. I think just by getting more comfortable within the NBA systems and just playing more in the NBA, he could get up to around 20 points per game just by getting smarter and just reading the NBA better. And if he does that, well, he's not just a scorer on offense, right? He's a shooter, and he's an awesome passer as well, so now Darren Fox is a legitimate co-star to help him run the helm. Now, obviously, the question is that actually enough though, right? The Pelicans, they also have stars. Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, right? Memphis Grizzlies, they have Ja Morant, JJJ. The Timberwolves have Karl-Anthony Towns, D'Angelo Russell, Anthony Edwards. But I think that Sacramento also already has the role players in place. Harrison Barnes is supremely underrated in my opinion. He's a really versatile scorer who can be complementary as both a shooter and also get you some buckets from the post or the mid-range. Think about Tobias Harris light pretty much. Last year he averaged 16 points per game and 3.5 assists on 50/39 splits. Buddy Hield is probably a top 5 shooter in the league. Last year he shot 39% from 3 on over 10 threes a game. And he finished the season second in total 3-pointers made per game, behind only of course Stephen Curry. And Shaun Holmes has definitely improved a lot over his career, where now I think he's a pretty reliable offensive player as a screen setter, as a screen roller. He's a pretty consistent just run and jump big man. Yeah, he's not going to be an elite post scorer, but you already have other scorers than Harrison Barnes and Buddy Hield, plus Darren Fox and hopefully Tyrese Haliburton, so it's okay if he knows his role is just to finish layups and get some easy baskets. Now granted, I admit, the wing rotation is kind of weak. Mo Harkless isn't great. Even in his prime with Portland Trailblazers, he was also just not great. Terrence Davis does give you some upside because he did average 11 points per game on 37% from 3 last year in 27 games in Sacramento. And if he captures some of that old Toronto Raptors upside he showed back in I think 2020, he could be very valuable as a shooting guard / small forward. But ask yourself this, are the Pelicans even much better? Obviously they have Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram, and plus Jonas Valanciunas, who by the way was a fantastic add this season, but their supporting players like Devontae Graham and Josh Hart, they're definitely not as good as Harrison Barnes or Shaun Holmes. And yeah, maybe Nickeil Alexander-Walker or Kira Lewis Jr. pops off this season, but my point is, the Pelicans, they don't have the greatest roster either. And you can say the same about the Timberwolves too, right? Obviously they have Karl-Anthony Towns, D'Angelo Russell, who are great on offense, and Josh Okogie, Jared Vanderbilt, they're good on defense, but they lack two-way players who are both good on offense and defense. And I think you can also argue the Kings have more chemistry, right? Because Harrison Barnes, Darren Fox, Buddy Hield, they've all been together since 2019. And that core finished 39-43 as the 9th seed that season. Now, for that point though, I think there's two important things that need to be mentioned. First off, it's the defense. The second one is Davion Mitchell, and we'll talk about that in a second. Back in 2019, which was the Kings' best season in 10 seasons, they had Dave Yeager as their head coach. They fired him, and now it's Luke Walton, who I honestly cannot believe still has his job because he just finished with the worst defensive rating of all time, and somehow he wasn't fired. I can't think of another coach that did something that drastically poor and kept his job. The big problem last year wasn't offense. They were 12th in offensive rating last year, which is perfectly fine. That's above average, right? The problem was defense. And that problem definitely stems from the coaching because this team has the defensive talent to be an average defensive team. Not a top 10 team or top 5 team, whatever, but they have the actual defensive players to be a decent one at least, right? Shaun Holmes, he is undersized, yes, but unless he's playing against Karl Anthony Towns, Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic, some of the best offensive centers in the league, it's not a huge disadvantage because he also has benefits like being quicker on the perimeter, and he also runs a fast break better at his size and he can beat some other slower bigs with his quickness. Again, he's not the ideal defensive center, but if Brad Stevens with the Celtics back in 2015 can make Tyler Zeller his starting center and still have a top 12 defense, the Kings, they can do that with Shaun Holmes. Harrison Barnes, he's above average as a defender. He's got great size, he's pretty smart too. Back with the Warriors, he was pretty important for their defense. Tyrese Haliburton, he's awesome on defense. I think he's going to make an all-defensive team sometime in his career. Darren Fox is kind of iffy because when he's actually locked in, he's pretty good. He's got good length and speed, obviously, but he has to actually be focused, which sometimes, a lot of times actually, he's just not. And to be honest, I think that's a problem because defense always has way more to do with effort, intensity, energy, all of those vague, whatever, buzzwords. But to be honest, it's true. Those are more important than actual defensive talent. Yeah, if you want to be a top 3 defense, it would be nice to have Anthony Davis or Rudy Gobert, obviously. But to be a top 15 one, top 21, you don't need that. And to me, it seems like Luke Walton is just not quote-unquote inspiring his team enough on defense. They're not playing with enough energy and actual emphasis on defense, right? You watch them play, they're giving up easy layups and open threes at a way higher clip than what should be acceptable. And again, like I said, their team isn't inherently flawed on defense. Shaun Holmes, he's not perfect, but he's good enough. Tyrese Haliburton, he's good. Harrison Barnes, he's good enough. Individually, none of these guys are bad except for maybe Buddy Hield. But Luke Walton, he's just not getting enough out of these players. And unfortunately, the Kings, they still have Luke Walton as their coach. But as to Davion Mitchell, the second point I want to bring in, I'm hoping, well, I don't really hope that much because I'm not a Kings fan. I'm hoping Davion Mitchell makes a difference because he's probably going to be a great defender in the NBA from day one. And we already saw it in the Summer League. Davion Mitchell was probably the best defender out of everybody in that Summer League. And if you're the Kings, you're hoping for 2 things. The first is Luke Walton getting fired. But the other 2 is, the first one, you hope that Davion Mitchell tips the scales in favor of trying on defense, right? Hopefully Tyrese Haliburton and Shaun Holmes, and now Davion Mitchell, if all 3 of these guys are playing with energy and hustle, whatever, blah, 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 they incentivize Harrison Barnes and Darren Fox to actually start trying more. Energy is always infectious. If you're seeing 3 of your teammates just bust their ass on the court, you're also going to start doing it too unless you're just some kind of soulless sociopath. And we also hope that Luke Walton takes a long, hard look at this team and realizes last year, hey, we were pretty bad because our defense was awful. And you hope that Luke Walton focuses on that more. And look, making the playoffs, it's going to be really tough. If you assume Utah, Phoenix, Denver, the Lakers, Golden State Warriors, Mavericks, and Blazers are playoff locks, that's only 1 spot left, and the Kings would have to beat out the Clippers, who are missing Kawhi, but they still have Paul George, of course. The Pelicans, like I mentioned before, the Grizzlies, the Pelicans, maybe even OKC if SGA is just awesome. So yeah, I definitely think it's more likely that Sacramento misses the playoffs than the Kings actually make the playoffs. But I truly believe their odds are close to being as good as a lot of these other teams. And look, they make it to the play-in tournament, anything can happen. The Grizzlies weren't supposed to make the playoffs this year, but they beat Golden State, they beat the Spurs, and look what they accomplished. So, to recap, in conclusion, if Tyrese Haliburton takes the next step and is averaging 20 points a game, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, being an awesome defender, borderline all-star level player, and De'Aaron Fox, of course, who somehow I haven't talked about yet, is already an all-star level player. He's just waiting on the Kings to be good enough for him to make the team. If Shaun Holmes can stay healthy, and if Davion Mitchell comes in and he's making 3-pointers, he's playing great defense, Sacramento has a solid squad. Now, do I personally want to see them make the playoffs? not really, to be honest, because I'd rather see the Pelicans or Minnesota because they're more exciting. But I do think the Kings are underrated. But yeah, those are my thoughts. That's the end of the video, and hope you enjoy. I'll see you for the next one.